For the second time this season, Charles Leclerc is blaming the Ferrari pitwall team for losing him a race. The Silverstone Grand Prix was littered with incredible moments, but for Ferrari, it was their strategy calls that took the headlines. Late in the race, it looked like Leclerc was on for an easy win, but Esteban Ocon's retirement brought out the safety car, and the Ferrari strategy left him stranded. We're going to look at what exactly happened and how Ferrari are reacting to the fresh criticism of them. Carlos Sainz secured the first victory of his F1 career on his 150th race start. 2022 has been the best season of his career so far, and he's on track to record a personal record points haul before the summer break this season. At Silverstone, he took pole position over Max Verstappen, whose Q3 was affected by a spin and a yellow flag let on in the session. During the race, Carlos Sainz found himself ahead of Charles Leclerc in the early stages of the race. Charles was missing his front wing end plate following some contact with Sergio Perez after the race restarted following Zhou Guanyu's crash at the first turn on lap 1. You would have thought that missing a big aero part like that end plate would have affected his car's performance, but that didn't seem to be the case. He spent lap after lap pushing his teammate Carlos Sainz around the track. Charles called over the team radio to be allowed past, but the team didn't want to intervene. At the time, Lewis Hamilton looked to be closing the gap to the two leading Ferraris, and Charles felt his race was being damaged by being stuck behind his teammate. Obviously, Leclerc couldn't have known what was going on elsewhere in the race, and in an interview after the race, Mattia Binotto explained why the team chose to not swap the cars. For a very simple reason. At that moment, it was not necessary to do it, and there was still a lot of time to make that decision. For us, the priority continues to be maximizing the team result. Team orders come only when this is in jeopardy. There is an argument that Ferrari made mistakes later in the race, but this one probably wasn't. Charles Leclerc isn't really far enough ahead of Carlos Sainz in the World Drivers' Championship yet that Ferrari can obviously favour one over the other. If Carlos was obviously out of the championship, then that would be an easy decision, and Carlos would probably have been understanding. In the end, Ferrari did have to make the call to swap the cars after their first pit stops though. Both Ferrari cars pitted before Lewis Hamilton, who was running in third before either Ferrari car pitted. He had looked after his tyres well early in the race and was lapping faster than both Ferraris as the Scuderia brought their cars in. The Mercedes plan was obviously to try and get Lewis to push hard for 3 to 5 laps on the tyres he started the race before pitting. The aim being that he would be able to pit and come out ahead of both of the Ferraris, performing what is known as an undercut. Luckily for the Ferrari drivers, Hamilton didn't have the pace for that. On lap 31, after both Charles and Carlos had pitted, Ferrari finally made the call to switch the cars. Carlos had been given a target lap time to stop him holding up Leclerc and hadn't been able to hit it. This happened as Hamilton pitted, and the Mercedes driver ended up coming out just a couple of seconds behind the Ferraris. The Mercedes plan almost worked, but in the end, Hamilton just didn't have the pace. At that point, Ferrari's on-track decision seemed to have been pretty spot on. They didn't swap the cars early in the race when it seemed unnecessary to do so, avoiding causing arguments or tension in the garage. Then when both cars had new tyres on and Sainz was unable to achieve the predicted lap time that Leclerc could, they swapped the cars. Sainz seemed to have no issues with that as well. He knew that not achieving the target lap time meant Charles would be faster and led him through without any complaint. Those decisions were made without any pressure on the pit wall though. They had time to think and analyse the data and discuss the best course of action. On lap 39, however, the pressure on the pit wall crew increased. Esteban Ocon parked his Alpine just before the Copse corner, and at 15:57:11 Greenwich Mean Time, the electronic system of the race direction sent the message of safety car deployed. Leclerc would initially seem lucky. He was at the end of Hangar Straight, approaching the Stowe corner. He still had time to enter the pits after the safety car had been deployed, but to many people's amazement, he didn't. Behind him, Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton and all the rest stopped for fresh soft tyres, which guaranteed them an overwhelming performance advantage over the Monegasque in the last 10 laps of the race. In the post-race interview, the Ferrari team principal Mattia Binotto stated that the choice not to stop Leclerc was dictated by the fact that there was not enough time to make a double pit stop without Sainz having to wait in the pit lane, and therefore waste precious time in the duel with Hamilton. And at that point, the Spaniard was stopped as his tyres were 5 laps older than the Monegasque. Unfortunately for Mattia, that is completely untrue. At the time the safety car was deployed, Charles Leclerc had a 4.7 second lead over Carlos Sainz. Even under green flag conditions, 4.7 seconds would be enough time to make the double pit stop, although certainly very challenging for the mechanics and not without some risk. Teams can easily perform a pit stop in 3 seconds, meaning there would have been 1.7 seconds where neither car was in the pits. But when the cars slow down for the safety car, the time gaps get bigger, even though the physical distance may remain the same. In the 11 seconds it takes Leclerc to get to the pit entrance, the gap between Sainz and Leclerc almost doubles to 9.3 seconds. Sainz could even have slowed down further, as Hamilton wouldn't have been able to overtake him under safety car conditions. This means that Ferrari could have easily had over 10 seconds to pit Leclerc and get ready for Sainz to come into the pits, which by modern F1 team standards should have been a breeze. Why Binotto used timing as an excuse at first is beyond us, when it's clearly not true. The Ferrari team at the time told Leclerc that the pit window was not open, which means he wouldn't have had time to pit and come out in front of Hamilton if Hamilton chose not to pit. This is definitely true, but if Hamilton did pit and took track position instead, he would have had to defend against Leclerc with hard tyres, while the Ferrari driver was on fresh softs. Does the Ferrari pit wall really not have enough belief in Leclerc to trust him to overtake Hamilton in that situation? In hindsight, it seems that the Ferrari strategy team focused only on the pit stop window and not on the overall state of the race. This is another instance of the team coming under pressure and making a terrible decision. They made the easy choice, which was to leave the Monegasque out at the front of the race and hope he can hold on, but that was never going to happen. After the race, Matier tried to defend the decision to leave Leclerc out. Common sense says to give priority to whoever is in front, so that they don't lose positions on the track. There is nothing strange about our strategy. The priority was as always who is in front, in this case Charles. He had fresher tyres. If we'd stopped him, our rivals would have opted for an opposite strategy and would have gained positions, also having almost new tyres. It is the same strategy used for Lewis Hamilton in the Abu Dhabi race last year. He did not return to the pits. Matier must be thinking of a different F1 race in Abu Dhabi last year, because the one I remember was not a comparable situation. It was unlikely the race would have restarted in Abu Dhabi, and even if it did, Mercedes assumed there would be multiple back markers between Hamilton and Verstappen, which would have protected the Mercedes driver. At Silverstone, there were 10 laps left. The race was definitely going to restart, and Hamilton's 6-lap-old hard tyres are in no way comparable to a brand new set of softs. Remember, the hard tyres were incredibly hard to warm up at Silverstone, and if Hamilton had sat behind the safety car waiting for the race to restart, they would have been ice cold. That is exactly what ended up happening to Charles. Binotto and Leclerc were seen chatting immediately after the race at Silverstone, but the Ferrari team boss says this was just him trying to console his driver after he was once again unlucky. Firstly, I knew that he was disappointed and frustrated. He's been once again unlucky today, because a safety car when you're leading a few laps to the end is somehow bad luck. And I think that overall, that's the reason. I think we simply tried not to be too disappointed. Sorry Matier, but Leclerc has every right to be disappointed and frustrated after Silverstone, because your pit wall team let him down, not any bad luck. From what we've explained above, you know that the reality of the situation is that Charles Leclerc should never have been in the position he was, and if Ferrari would have pitted him, he would have been a strong favourite to win the race. After his chat with Matier, Leclerc spoke to the media and said, "I don't want to comment now. I want to discuss it and have the full view with the team what the reason was," he said, of the decision not to pit his car. "Obviously, I felt personally I was very strong in the first part of the race and that I lost a little bit of time. Whether this would have changed the end result, I don't think it would have, but just for the future, we need to check everything." If Leclerc was angry after the mistakes the team made in Monaco, he's going to be furious after this latest strategy error. It seems that as soon as the Ferrari team comes under pressure, they don't have the courage to make the big decisions when needed. It's something that Christian Horner and Toto Wolff are well known for, and it's what makes their team stand out as real contenders for titles. Whether Matier himself is to blame or if it is the team behind him, he now needs to make some decisive decisions to bring around the change in the team that will allow them to make the most of every single race, instead of crumbling under pressure and throwing away vital championship points. What are your thoughts on the Ferrari team? Should Matier go, or can he make the changes needed to get Ferrari a championship win? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and until next time, drive safe and bye bye.